r/AskReddit by Redmond Dtes. People who had abstinence-only sex education, what were the biggest falsehoods you were taught? I remember this dumb activity we did freshman year of high school, where they gave each of us a fun-size Snickers bar, and said that, if we brought it back the next day, we'd get a second. The idea being that, if you hold off on 6, the reward is twice as great. One of my classmates bought a bag of fun-sized Snickers, and passed them out to the class, so we each had like 3 or 4 before class began. I hope he's doing well in life. They demonstrated how condoms work by pulling out a huge fishing net with the widest weave possible. Then they dropped ping pong balls through them to show how sperm and STIs could easily get through the rubber. We had several teenage pregnancies. Shocker. I had sex ed in the Bible Belt, and I swear to God this exchange happened. After explaining how AIDS can be transmitted, the teacher asked, "What is the only way you can be 100% certain you don't get AIDS?" Don't use drugs, and you and your partner should get tested for AIDS before having sex. Well, that doesn't necessarily work, because sometimes the AIDS test can have a false negative. Does anyone else know the answer? Abstinence. Yes. Don't have sex until you get married. But what if you marry someone who has AIDS? Well, before you get married, you have a bunch of tests done to make sure you don't have AIDS. That we had to love each other for babies to be made. AIDS can be transmitted through blood. And sometimes, I see you kids holding hands in the hallways, but that is dangerous, because sometimes you can get cuts on your hands, and you might give each other AIDS. Not being a virgin was like being a chewed up piece of gum. Extremely damaging to the psyche. Sex outside of marriage equals 100% chance of pregnancy and/or STD. Women can't enjoy or don't want sex. Not me. But had a friend in college who went to a private religious school, and he thought if any 2 people had unprotected sex, there was a chance you would get HIV. Like 2 virgins who don't have it previously could manifest it through sin or something. My school legitimately didn't do sex ed. They did puberty, and that was actually quite well done, but nothing on sex itself, though the lesson was still called sex ed. I'm assuming they could say, we do sex ed lessons, and not technically be lying. Why the F do we allow religious schools? Eventually I transferred schools, and they did actual sex ed, though presumably several years after they were supposed to, because we were 16 or 17 at the time. During the condom on a banana bit, one boy said, "But what do I do if I don't have any bananas at home at the time?" Which is still the funniest freaking thing I've ever heard. I was taught that the HIV virus was small enough to pass through the pores on a condom, and that even if you wore a condom, you were going to get HIV if you had sex with someone before marriage. I got the double whammy of Catholic school, who also taught that God chose Mary to give birth to Jesus because she was without sin, and he can do whatever the fudge he wants with miracles and shit. I spent entirely too long with irregular periods, panicking that I was pregnant because God chose me, cause I had never broken a rule in my life. Also, you will go to hell if you have sex. I don't remember the specifics, but I went to 2 different high schools. One taught abstinence, one taught safe sex. The school that taught safe sex had no teen pregnancies. The school that taught abstinence, there were at least a dozen pregnancies in just my year. A friend of mine grew up in rural Texas. Once, years later, we were camping in New Mexico and were brushing our teeth together. He brushed his tongue and went fairly far back, causing him to gag a little bit. He then said, "That's how I've always known I wasn't gay. I can't handle anything going down my throat like that." I was stunned for a moment, then simply asked, "Do you think gay men can't gag or throw up?" He stared blankly, then as it registered, went, "Freaking Texas public schools." Seems like he took the news well. It's so wild to expect people to just not screw. I felt it was mostly fear-based. Scare you into not having sex. By saying you'll get an STD or pregnant or hurt, etc. etc. I asked my then boyfriend if he was ready to have sex after attending sex education class that day. Lost my virginity that weekend. The licked cupcake lesson. They brought in cupcakes, then the teacher licked the frosting off and asked if we still wanted them. That premarital sex is a licked cupcake, nobody wants it. A friend said cupcakes aren't people, and she'd just take off the part of the cupcake that was licked, but that's illegal to do to a human. The teacher was pissed. Also that you get pregnant from sex every time, period, fact of life. My teacher tried the cupcake analogy too. Poor guy really underestimated how many kids still wanted the cupcake. He tried wiping it on the ground, and there were still a bunch of takers. My school didn't like the fact that boys and girls would just touch each other. Like touch as in hug, hold hands, or just mess around in a non-sexual manner. Being at a Christian school, however, admin didn't like it, so they decided to split the boys and girls up into 2 buildings to talk about what's appropriate behavior and what's not. Being the bright, educated, and brilliant principal of our school, she brought her laptop screen up on the screen projector for all the girls at the school to see and googled girls touching. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of Christian girls found out what lesbians were that day, and especially what lesbians do when Christian parents aren't watching. Abstinence only education. Religious guest speaker, her name was Molly. She glued 2 paper cutouts together, one pink and one blue. Then, at the end of her talk, she tried pulling them apart, but obviously pink bits were left on the blue paper, and vice versa. She said that every time you have sex with someone, you leave a part of yourself behind. You should wait to have sex until you're married, so you can be whole for your partner. Edit to add. This was in public school in the Midwest, about 30 minutes from a major city. Simple solution here, only have sex with people of your same sex, that way the parts left on you still match. It was fine and with what seemed to be good intentions. But completely useless. Everyone still wanted to have sex. Some girls became very good at BJ's, convincing themselves it wasn't sex, or at least keeping themselves at ease over the hyped pregnancy fears. I had one date with a girl who claimed to be a virgin, but sucked dongs like a vacuum cleaner. I remember in middle school my PE teacher telling us that we shouldn't worry about having sex to be good at it. You'll naturally be good at it on your wedding night. What a load of dog shit. I grew up in West Texas and had abstinence only education. Some of the shit they pulled included had us pull a poker chip out of a paper bag to represent having sex. If it was a white chip, nothing happened. A red chip was pregnancy, and a blue chip was getting an STD. When asked about the efficacy of condoms, which they weren't even supposed to talk about at all, the teacher said that using a condom was like flipping a coin, because they were only 50% effective. Gave us all paper hearts, and told us to go around and tear little pieces off of everyone else's. This was supposed to represent how every time you had sex with a new partner, you gave a little bit of your heart away until there was none left. Gave us a paper clip and told us to make it straight, then told us to bend it back to its original form. It represented our virginity, because once it was straightened out, you could never really get it back. That using tampons would destroy your innocence and purity, and by using one you effectively are no longer a virgin. It was pads only ever. Source: went to an all-exclusive Roman Catholic all-girls high school. That a woman who has had sex with multiple partners is a whore. The classic, you will get pregnant and die. Yeah, Midwest rural sex education is interesting. That's all folks. Thank you for watching. If you like videos like this one, why not like and subscribe for more? Have a nice evening. tell your friends about me.